the last thing any business owner wants to be is surprised, especially when it involves cost or
Hmm.
operational changes. So, let's not make a change in 90 days. Let's start talking about making a change over 90 days to implement in another 90 days at the earliest.
Yeah. Well, I think you nailed it, right? And this is where, as human beings, if we know what to expect, our anxiety levels are lower and our
Yeah.
trust is higher.
A-
I've
Amen.
seen trust get broken in a lot of systems. And, honestly, when you look back on it 6 months later, it really does usually point to we rolled this out too fast. Welcome to Dear Frannie, the franchise advice column. I'm your host, Catherine LeBlanc. And along with my co host, James Vitrano, we've spent our careers inside growing franchise systems. From marketing to operations, we break down real questions and real challenges and share the kind of answers you only get from experience. Let's jump in. Thanks for joining us on Dear Frannie. I'm your host, Catherine.
And I am her co host, James.
All right, James, what do you have for us today for our this or that question?
Let's get at it, right at it. Okay. This or that. Do you create an official space for franchisee to franchisee communication with structure and guardrails? Or do you avoid formal forums to reduce risk and distraction? What say you, the emoji?
I'm going to take the position that you should create an official space for franchisee to franchisee communication. However, I think it is important to have the structure and guardrails in place. And if you've never done community management on social media, it's very similar to that, in that you can really lay out what is this forum for? What are the rules of this forum? And then what are the consequences when you don't abide by those rules? And so what really happens, and for new franchise organizations, you may not have experienced this yet, but what happens is this can turn into a bitch session and it can turn into negative communication really quickly. And so that's why it's important to have those guardrails and structure in place. And then I'll add one more thing to have in place if you are going to do this, is to have a community manager, have someone on staff that is monitoring this communication and can jump in to answer franchisee questions and prevent some of that negative spiral. And so I would absolutely set up an official space, because you want our franchisees are going to talk to each other. You want to foster that. And in that fostering, build that kind of garden, that gated garden of communication with them. So that's my position of why you should create the official space.
It's like Bruce Springsteen's secret garden. You
That's
roll in the
right.
gated garden. Look, I think I really agree with you on this. I don't know that this is a position that I want to take a hard stance on, but
Mhm,
I'll argue the other side. If you create something, you are going to be responsible for it, right?
mhm,
So I would say maybe at an emerging to growth franchise or level, it's informal relative to how franchisees want to communicate with each other, right? Or even communicate with you. An informal sort of flow is fine. I do think that there is some benefit to having some coordinated structure as you get a little bit bigger. And I think the expectation of the franchise base would be that there is some sort of mechanism to
mhm,
enable that. So I think, at the beginning, don't worry about it, right? There's other things you need to be worried about
mhm,
and focused on. But as you start getting some different franchisees into your system, looking at a structured system that fosters community, but also has to be sort of gated by you is the
mhm.
way to go. So I don't know if it's a this or that. I think it's a now and a then, right? That when you grow up, you can go to it. If I was rolling out a new franchise offering, would not focus on that initially. That'd be an add-on later.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that the struggle that teams have is that negative spiral. And when franchisees can negative spiral with each other, it can become a big distraction for your team, because they're chasing down whatever the chat board said was the issue of the day, instead of the issues that you guys have decided is going to be the issue of the day. But the bottom line is that they're going to be talking to each other in one way or another. And so do you want to have visibility into the conversation, or do you say, like, okay, well, they're going to be talking to each other anyway, so I don't need to be hosting it and creating this distraction for the team?
Well, I'd say it's a really good point. I think at some point in time, providing that mechanism is a nice give by the
Mhm.
franchisor, but franchisees are going to talk to each other formally, informally, or whatnot. So it then
Right.
becomes, is this something you franchisees want the franchise to be aware of? And
Mhm.
to your
Yeah.
point, I think it's a bit
Yeah.
of the FAC responsibility as well as the
Yeah.
franchisor to say, let's make it a productive place, not just a
Mhm.
total um, downward spiral into dismay and disarray.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that goes to, like, it's not just about the forum that you set up, it's about the feedback mechanism and the processes you've set up for that feedback, for sure.
Amen. Referencing
Yeah.
a podcast a while ago.
Right. Right. No, that's really good. All right, switching gears to our Dear Frannie question today. So it feels like franchisees are constantly frustrated, and every change we make just seems to create a new problem. How do you figure out what's actually causing the tension, and how do you fix it without making things worse? And I think we have experienced this at every brand that I've ever been at. I have experienced this. And look, it just speaks to the relationship between franchisees and franchisor. And I think that the intentionality you need to bring to that relationship, because nobody's ever happy, 100% happy with anyone at any time. And
Yeah,
so
well,
it's,
I mean, look, I'm 100% happy with you, LeBlanc. So
there
let's.
you go. Well, and so it's like, how are you creating the environment so that when things are not agreed upon, again, I think it goes back to that feedback mechanism. But I mean, I think, back to the question, how do you figure out what's actually causing the tension, and how do you fix it without making things worse? You know, where would you start, James, as far as, let's figure out, okay, is this, something that we need to tackle, and or, how do you address, I think that feeling of frustration is hard to turn around.
Yeah, look, I think first and foremost, from a franchisee's perspective, owning a business in and of itself is frustrating, exhausting, and a challenge,
Yeah.
right? So back to, our conversations about franchisee persona and whatnot,
Mhm.
right? Like, first, there's going to be frustration by the business owner, no matter if you are batting 1,000 as a franchise. It's just frustrating owning a
Yeah.
business. It is. So,
Mhm.
I think there is first the need to seek to understand what's
Mhm.
going on at the individual unit level or with the individual franchisee, right? So it's really from a franchise perspective, one, knowing that frustration is going to be there whether you do everything perfectly or not, right?
Yeah.
Two, your job as the franchisor is set forth in the franchise agreement, but the expectation is a little bit more than that. So you kind of need to be a bit of a counselor, a bit of a
Mhm.
therapist, a bit of a sounding board to help, right? And then
Mhm.
I guess the last two things would be, is it something that you're causing, right? Like the first sort of view, in my opinion, needs to be, is it something that we are putting on the franchisee or the franchisee system that is
Mhm.
creating this frustration? And
Yeah.
that's a bifurcated issue, right? Is it our system as a
Mhm.
franchisor, or is it new things that we're pumping down, right? So that's that bifurcated analysis. And then the last thing becomes, if it's not us, or if, and it's never 100% of anything that we're contributing to it, what can we do to ease it? But if there is some things that's going on operationally for the specific franchisee, how
Mhm.
can we give that franchisee some attention or some assistance to
Mhm.
kind of settle down the chaos?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the four-step analysis is, one, seek to understand, right? Well, really, it's one, no, from the get-go, there's going to be frustration. Two, seek to understand. Three, look in the mirror, bifurcate whether it's our system or something new we're pushing down. And four, is it, something going on with him or her that we
Mhm.
can help out with? That's how I would
Yeah.
look at it.
Well, and I think that, to that point, there are some things that as franchisors we do unintentionally that can create frustration.
Always caused by marketing, by the way.
Yeah. Well, marketing is a major frustration with franchising and franchisees. And I think part of that is expectation setting and clarity of roles and who does what and how this is going to roll out. And it doesn't matter how, buttoned up this feels in the onboarding process. To your original point of owning a business is frustrating. And when you are part of a franchise, sometimes your frustration can be misdirected to the franchisor in
More
a
often
way
than
that,
not, it's going to be.
Yeah, well, and that's where that creates tension, right? And so
Right.
it's like, okay, well, how are we making sure that our expectations are clear from the get-go and reinforced as we communicate with our franchisees? But then also, I've seen a lot of times I see systems that, the frustrations are starting, the negative Nelly communication is starting. And in a rush to be reactive and fix the problem, you do actually make it worse
For
because
sure.
the core you didn't figure out what the core was, and a lot of times the core is change management,
Yeah.
and you guys rolling out things too fast and or without a true kind of rollout onboarding structure, and then that can snowball into, "I'm feeling frustrated as a franchisee because I don't know what I don't know, and I don't feel like you guys are telling me what I don't know," and then
Right.
it snowballs again because it's like, "Okay, well, let's switch it or change it," and it's like, "Nope, the root cause was the change."
And
I
I
think
would
that
I
yeah.
would throw out to your point, it's really good. I think on a high level, it's be wary of the franchise that's not an operator, him or herself, right?
Mm,
So,
yeah.
like, before you start pushing stuff to a system or before you start throwing stuff or reacting to stuff, like, take it into your operations
Mhm.
and look at it from 360 degrees before you rush to push it down. Because, it's gonna impact the franchisee at a whole different level from a unit level economics and margin aspect than it is going to impact you as the franchise unless you've run it through your own stores. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of elements to this question, right? And it's a really really good one. I would say this is where the franchise business consultants and or the
Mhm.
franchise ops folks have to do a really good job of communicating frequently and empathetically with the franchisee,
Mhm.
and then also working internally to keep everybody aligned on
Mhm.
why and what's happening so that that temperature doesn't get much higher, right? And that's why I think the franchise business and the franchise ops folks are the most difficult job in
Oh,
franchising.
yeah. I
They
think so. Well, and, to that point, a lot of the frustration, a lot of the things I've seen put in place to reduce frustration is involving ops.
right,
Involving ops beforehand, making sure that, like, from a marketing perspective, getting into the cadence where, okay, my ops team is reviewing what our marketing plan is, after I've gotten feedback from the marketing committee and it's been finalized, but before it's gone out to franchisees at large so that
yep.
we're poking holes in it. And it's not about ops approving the marketing plan. It's about ops, help me find the holes in this of why this is going to impact change and create problems.
See,
And,
this
how
is
do
where
you get it adopted?
I love to argue with the marketing person though, right? Because I would say there's a part of me that would say ops can kill your marketing initiative and
They
should
can.
if it's
Yeah.
going to create an operational challenge at a legitimate level, right? And I think,
Yeah.
look, there's where frustration initiates in any organization in the F&B industry, right? Be it franchise or corporate or franchisee, you as a marketing professional are charged and demanded to do X, Y, and Z, right?
Hmm.
Ops is got to execute on A, B, and C, and fitting those together and the feedback mechanism associated with it is the most important thing and alignment associated with that, right? So that stage gating process internally has to be, that family needs to fight it out, figure it out,
Hmm.
be aligned
Hmm.
to be able to go forward
Yeah.
without, to your point, rushing stuff out to the system. And ops needs to give you feedback that enables you to either create something that's more effective or find a
Right.
way forward.
Yeah, because I was gonna say that, the challenge can come, yes, ops could kill everything, and they do oftentimes, and so it's finding that balance of like, "Okay, but we also need to impact revenue, so how do we make this happen?" And so to your point, coming up with solutions on like, yes, we can that those are the most successful ops marketing partnerships that I've been part of where,
Which is
the
fun, right?
operations team
Totally
and
fun.
it's so fun. It makes it so fun to work on these things because the ops team is the can do, figure it out team, and
Yep.
the marketing team gets to be kind of the dreamer team. And so when you have, I think to your point around putting it through the franchisor or franchisee point of view through your own corporate stores, getting your teams to share the same empathy team to team and
Yep.
not, in addition to the empathy that we need to share with franchisees can help grease the wheels because if we're one team to the franchisee, then some of that tension can be overcome with,
For sure.
that you said that coaching, that counseling. Look, our FBCs we know are half counselor, half coach. And so if our FBCs are on the same page as whatever it is, the initiative that we're going out with, then that kind of coaching counseling session
Well,
is one team, right?
and I
One
think
team,
it's
one goal.
imperative that they're included in the stage gating process, right? Same
Mhm.
thing. I've seen successful organizations include the FAC members at certain levels, right,
Mhm.
of the
Yeah.
stage gating. So, I think to our theme here, it's more about preparation, communication, and empathy,
Mhm.
and that process that you have in place to mitigate the impacts and the frustrations that are going to come. This, right? You
Mhm.
can work it 57 times, but when you roll it out, there's gonna be pain points, right? And so
Yeah.
you're gonna have to spend time diagnosing that, empathizing, and figuring out if there's adaptations that need to be made, or we just need to lean in to help somebody get through it, you know?
Yeah. Well, and so tell me, I've had some experiences where the frustration has started, tensions are high, and as a leadership team, we're discussing how do we move these tensions down, and or try and redirect them right to where they're going to have a more productive purpose. And so some of the things that I've seen us work on with this is, if you don't have an FAC, creating an FAC. This is where some of the committees can come into play. And then talking to those individuals about being advocates for you in the field. It's almost like, in marketing, we talk about influencer marketing a lot, right? And we talk about early adopters and the stages people go through for your product. You need the early adopter influencers to be influencers in your system. And so, how are you cultivating those relationships so that you can pull on those levers when these tensions increase?
Yeah, I think you've articulated exactly what needs to be done, right? Your FBCs, your FAC members, your subcommittee members, or just including some of those identified franchisees who are test open or willing to collaborate, or in fact have created or come up with different takes themselves that you as a franchisor have learned for. So, you know,
Mhm.
taking that sort of didactic approach with the franchisee versus a unilateral one, I think is really the most important thing, where this is a give and a take, where ultimately I have to make the decision for the brand at some point in time, but your feedback, input, and involvement is imperative to
Mhm.
success, right? So I think all of those things are great. I do think that FBC relationship with the specific franchisees, I think like the more you communicate about what we're thinking about,
Mhm.
versus like dropping it on them. Don't
Right.
keep it. Don't keep there's no. I mean, rare is the oh my gosh, we don't want anybody to know about this situation in the system. So I think the last thing any business owner wants to be is surprised, especially when it involves cost or
Mhm.
operational changes. So let's not make a change in 90 days. Let's start talking about making a change over 90 days to implement in another 90 days at the earliest.
Yeah. Well, I think you nailed it, right? And this is where, as human beings, if we know what to expect, our anxiety levels are lower and our
Yeah.
trust is higher. I've seen trust get broken in a lot of systems. And, honestly, when you look back on it 6 months later, it really does usually point to we rolled this out too fast. I do think that the 90% of the issues that you have around tension and around that losing trust happens in that rollout stage. What about you?
I
Where are
think
those tensions that you see?
Yeah, I think a turnover at the corporate level is a nightmare for franchisees.
Uh, okay.
Like, it's a horrible thing, and I think, and this is a whole nother soapbox that we should talk about at some point in time, is, it's hard for a franchisee to invest their money into a system that has high turnover at the leadership levels, because inevitably it ends up causing cost and impact to the franchisee if a new CMO comes in, a new CEO, a new COO, a new board, like those strategic changes that happen overnight. Because for most of corporate F&B folks, it's just a job, right? They don't have money fully invested in their own.
Mhm.
Which is why every business I've been associated with since Ruby, I've invested my own money in, just because I felt like that was important for my franchisees to understand, or my partners to understand,
Mhm.
that I'm invested in this as well. It's not just a job. So I think corporate turnover at the franchise level is the worst thing for franchisees. And if you are a prospective franchisee, you need to look at that. Secondly, I think rolling things out too fast. Third, being reactive to trend, right? For chasing top
Okay.
line
Yeah.
Chasing top line is another thing. And then I think fifth is being the failure to be accountable, right? After there's a
The
mistake or an issue or a headache, somebody
mhm.
needs to get on the phone and call somebody or go visit somebody and look them in the eye and go, I made a mistake, right? I
Right.
made a
Yeah.
mistake. We'll learn from it. We'll give you a royalty relief for a month just to help. Like being
Mhm.
accountable is imperative to improving trust.
Yeah.
Those are
Building
my
that
5.
trust.
Your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, and I'm totally agree with you, except for the last one around kind of chasing trend. So this is a soapbox that I get on a lot about with chasing trend. But a lot of times that pressure to chase it comes from the franchisee. And
For
so,
sure.
we've talked a lot about, process and how process can improve clarity and can improve, franchisee relationships. And so that chasing trend piece, I think it's an important piece to highlight around can cause franchisee tension and frustration, probably because it's not being rolled out correctly. It's chasing it. You're not necessarily doing it with a strategic end goal in mind. And so it's both, right? Because that can also cause not being innovative
Yeah.
or on top of trends can also cause a lot of franchise.
Lag, for sure, and I think, hopefully the host here maybe tags a episode or 2 about chasing trend and corporate turnover and impact on franchisees. I think it's
Mhm.
a whole dive, so kudos to you.
Yeah. All right. So you're today we talked about franchisee communications, when to kind of control it and monitor it, and then also what some of the things that might contribute to kind of decreasing in franchisee sentiment. So, what are your top 3 takeaways for today's episode?
Gated garden, love it. That's a total win there, right? I think that needs to just exist in the systems. 2, I think empathy and accountability need to exist in the systems, right? And then I think 3 is, you gotta make sure your FBC and your ops and your franchise team are integrated into the stage gating process. You?
Yes, I love that. I think my the top 3 things I want people to take away is around clarity is the key. Clarity and communication and setting expectations is the key to building trust. And then investing in those building trust activities with your franchisees can help you through those tension times. And then I think to your point, I love the thought process you had around, yes, let's talk about franchisee and franchisee communications, but how are we doing it in a way that ties back to the overall feedback process. So, love that.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. And if our discussion sounded familiar, you are not alone. You are right on time. And we appreciate you spending your time with us today at Dear Frannie.